All right, so now we actually have to solve the triangle or triangles that are formed here. So the first thing we need to do is determine how many triangles there are. So my first thought would be, is the angle that's given obtuse? Because if it is, then it's pretty easy to tell whether or not we've got one triangle or no triangles. This one is acute, so that does not apply. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my picture here out to the side, just in case I need extra space there. The angle given is 42 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and label that 42 degrees. This is angle A. So the side across from it is side A, which is 22. And then the side that's next to it would be side B, which is 12. Okay, now once again on this one, the side that is across from the angle that's given, if that is longer than the side that's next to it, then that means this will in fact create a triangle because it's definitely long enough to make it to the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in the rest of the triangle here. And then I'll label it. This angle over here is B. The one up top is going to be C. And so that means the side down here would have to be a little c. Okay, so now I have to go about solving this triangle here. And I'm going to use law of sines to do it. In order to use law of sines, I have to have a side and an angle that are related to each other. So on this one, I have side A and angle A. So I'm going to start my law of sines with that. So I'm going to have 22 over sine of 42 degrees. Okay, that came out looking like a sigma. I'm going to fix that. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to set that equal to, and then I need an angle and a side to relate. I don't have another angle, and the only other side that I know right now is side B. So I'm going to call that 12, and then that would be over sine of B. Okay, so now I have to solve this for an angle this time. Now it's actually kind of difficult to solve when it's like this. So I'm gonna do a little maneuver that makes things a whole lot easier. I'm just gonna flip both of the fractions there. So I'm gonna say this is sine of 42 degrees over 22 is equal to sine of B over 12. And if you didn't know that you could do that, you can convince yourself that that's equivalent pretty easily. Just take a couple of fractions that you know are equivalent with nothing but numbers, and then flip them and see if they're still equivalent. All right, so now to solve for B, I would start by multiplying both sides by 12. So that would make this say 12 sine 42 degrees over 22 is equal to sine of B. And now, in order to solve for B, I have to undo a sign. So I'm going to have to use the inverse operation for sine, which is inverse sine, which we just learned recently. Now, with that, you can't just throw that in anywhere you want to. You're taking the inverse sine of each side of the equation. So it's not like you can just write it on the end over here. That's not the same. You're not multiplying by inverse sine. You're taking the inverse sine of both sides. Okay, so now I'm ready to write this down. This would give me angle B. My exact value would be what I had written up there. So inverse sine of 12 sine of 42 degrees over 22. And then I would just need to calculate that. So I need to get that in my calculator, which is a little hard to do if you're using a scientific. So no matter what calculator you're using, you definitely want to try this and see if you get the correct answer there. So when I type this in my calculator, I get B is approximately 21.406 degrees. So there's one of my answers. That that was probably the hardest one to find on this one. So the next thing I'm going to be able to find is angle C. Now, normally I wouldn't want to use one of my approximated values in order to find any of the other things on the triangle. However, on this triangle, I don't have a choice. So with this one, instead of saying C is equal to, I'm going to say C is approximately equal to, because we are using an approximated value for B. I'm going to use the same formula that I did last time. It'd be 180 minus the sum of the two angles that I have values for. Okay, and I could put that in my calculator to get an approximation. So my approximation there would be 116.594 degrees. So there's a second answer. Now from there, since I know all three angles and I know two of the sides, I could find the missing side. And this time it would appear that I have a choice in sides to use, sides and angles that are related. But I want to use the ones where I did not have to approximate anything as often as possible. So I'm going to start with the same thing I did before at the very beginning. I'm going to start with 22 over sine 42. And I'm looking for side C. So this is going to be little c over, and then sine of angle C, which for this I have to use my approximation. I don't have a choice. So truthfully, since I used an approximation here, this really ought to be an approximately equal to sign. So now I can solve this one for side C by multiplying both sides by sine of 116.594. So that would give me 22 times sine of 116.594 degrees over sine of 42 degrees. Okay, so now I need to type that in my calculator so I can get a decimal approximation for side length C. So when I type that in, I get 29.34, and then there would be a 0 as my third decimal place. So I could write that or I could leave it off either way. So this would be my third value. Now before I move on and call this problem done, I would want to go back and look at whether or not the answers that I came up with are reasonable for the triangle that's given here. So I'm going to look at the angles first and determine which of the three angles is the smallest. And I see that B is the smallest angle. So that means that side B should be the smallest side length. My side lengths were 12, 22, and 29 approximately. So 12 is the smallest of those, so that matches up. The largest angle that I have on this one is C, angle C. So that means side C should be the longest. And a quick inspection on that shows me that side C is in fact the longest of the three. So I feel confident that my answers are reasonable here, and I could go ahead and move on. All right, now you answer the next couple of questions on the Google form.